When you have a conversation with somebody whose views are seemingly polar opposite to yours, on whatever the topic, how do you behave yourself? I don't mean do you behave good or badly. I'm saying internally, not externally. What's going on inside your head? If you say something that then is responded to with something completely different that doesn't seem to fit the way you see the world or the way you feel on a particular topic, do you feel a sense of learning more? Or do you feel yourself applying the brakes? I was going to apply the brakes. I'm driving. I was going to try to go for effect there, and I thought, nah, not a good idea. Yeah, that symbolism is not appreciated on the road. There's a reason the term road rage exists. I caused it. I'm just kidding. But do you feel yourself applying the brakes when you hear a thought that contradicts or seemingly contradicts the way you feel about something? Do you feel a war inside you that just needs to speak? Or are you able to just sit there and peacefully listen? It's not easy. There's many different responses to this. But my response is sometimes uncomfort. Sometimes. When I was younger, this was probably more true than now. As I've gotten older, the need to speak, yeah, we all have this need at some level. I definitely feel the need to speak about certain things. But it's not as important as the need to listen. The need to be quicker to do that. And be quicker to understand. Slower to respond. When I was younger, the reason this was not as much the case now, as with so many other things, having been on these drugs that I didn't choose for myself, well, indirectly, but they were definitely prescribed. One of the things I often felt growing up was not heard, and not only not heard, but shut down. And not just the obvious shutdown of these senses, right? With all these drugs coursing through my veins, this definitely shut me down to a lot of things that I would otherwise have been able to experience and understand better. So there's one level of the shutdown that the drugs caused, for sure. But there was also this more internal shutdown, this more meaningful shutdown, this more important shutdown to me, which was I couldn't communicate. And I felt every other attempt, or every other communication by other people besides myself, I felt that as a threat. I felt surrounded by people who were able to communicate quite well, or at least by the world standards, and definitely in comparison to me, I thought growing up, wow, they could dominate a conversation like no other. And I would be at their mercy to listen and absorb as much learning as I could from every person that could speak better than me. I hated that. And I felt this antagonistic need to just break this barrage of communication towards me. Just break it somehow. Speak out, even though it was out of turn or it didn't fit what was being talked about. Or maybe it was just some dumb action on my part. Like, I remember this. I remember feeling so overwhelmed in a conversation I was just listening to and not really having at a restaurant once that I just couldn't take it anymore. And so to completely disrupt the conversation that it was between, three other people besides me, there were four of us sitting at a table, I grabbed this very big glass of ice water that was given to us. You know, we're all given water to drink. Normally that's what we order because we want to save money. Ice water, yes. But I grabbed this big glass of ice water, one of those really tall tumblers, and I tumbled it on my head. Guess what? Everybody stopped talking. Yeah, including me. It was freaking cold. And it was in my underwear, and it was dripping down my back. And oh, God, that was awkward as hell. But it was less awkward than the feeling I had been feeling up until that point, which had been, I think, 20 minutes of nonstop communication by somebody other than me, and me just sitting there for 20 minutes listening to things I didn't care about, or things that excluded me, or things that made assumptions about my intelligence, or whatever it was. It was just so overwhelming that awkwardness trumped the ensuing awkwardness of dropping a bunch of cold ice water in my undies. I remember it was pretty exciting after the awkwardness subsided, just seeing the look on the faces of the conversation participants, or the steerers of the conversation. They all stopped, mouth agape, and just, why? And after they didn't say why, it was just their mouths silently hanging open, asking that question, why? But after they got over that, it was just a bunch of laughter and chaos. And I think we got up on the dance floor and started, I don't know if we danced or we just moved because it was wet. We moved to some other part where there was music. I think that's what it was. I don't think we danced. So back to the question. What do you do when someone shares something that is completely, or at least seemingly, completely against the way you feel about something? I'm glad now I'm able to not respond, or respond as I choose, though, not based on a whim of insecurity, or, not to say I'm not insecure. I struggle with that a lot still. I'm just the idiot that admits it. You do too if you think about it long and hard. But I'm glad that my brain allows me to respond as I choose, at least better than I was able to before. Before, the impulse control, that didn't exist. And how I felt is how I acted, and you knew everything there was to know about me, and that's not a good thing. You want to keep some of your cards concealed until you can trust somebody. I'm not saying be mysterious and be constantly aloof, but you don't know the motivations of people's hearts. If you're honest with yourself, you'll realize you don't know your own heart's motivations at times. Sometimes, many times, unless you ask, and then you listen to the answer, you'll find yourself quite surprised. So it's good to not speak for many reasons. Sometimes it's better just to learn, to understand, to question internally, and think long and hard on many different angles before you ever try to arrive at a single conclusion. Because, not to say that there's relativity in everything we do in life, there are some, I've said this before, there are some deeply seated convictions that I will never waver from, but for the most part, everything in life, luckily, has many different ways of looking at it. And that really helps promote awesome brainstorming that enables us to come up with beautiful solutions to problems that would have never been possible otherwise, had there only been a single or several finite ways of looking at the problem. So my challenge today for you listening, if you are, or watching, is the next time you find yourself in a conversation with somebody who doesn't quite see what you see, spend less time trying to convince them of how you see it, and spend more time, if you can, trying to understand why it is that they see it the way they see it. It doesn't mean that either one of you is going to have to change your minds, at least not overnight. Sometimes we do change our minds, and that's okay too, as we inform ourselves, as we allow others to inform us too. But spend more time trying to understand. And I will appreciate your understanding if you choose that route. So will many others. Peace, guys. Red light, night night. And of course, the most important part of this recording is the statement that this was day 23 of the 30-day challenge, where we are challenged to speak for at least 60 seconds, and one of these 30 days will eventually have to be at least 60